In this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about precept-dependent learning plasticity, as well as I'm going to be talking about another concept, which is multiple channels of communication, which has to do with how we process information within the environment and various components of the environment, and also within the self at both the sensory level and the precept level that's transduced into perceptions, and that is processed psychologically and perceptually into these physiological processes, forming these perceptual-psychophysiological processes that are occurring through multiple channels of sensory information processing, and which is often referred to as multimodal processing. And this is very useful for making predictions and forecasting various perceptions, motivations, emotions, actions, and behaviors, as well as stimulation and stimuli in the environment, and also to be able to navigate the world in various ways with greater acuity, and to also do so with some degree of pragmatic efficacy, which benefits our positive well-being. Often it's oriented particularly to that, to optimizing well-being, and also to produce the optimal conditions for learning, which various processes related to our psychology is focused on and adapts in accordance to create more of this flexibility and to be able to adapt to various conditions in the environment, as well as situations and situational conditions, and also to be able to utilize various contingencies, often for increasing our own fitness, but particularly maximize well-being. And that's associated with human flourishing and these self-actualization tendencies that move towards greater self-actualization. And so when we're talking about multiple channels of communication, what's going on here is that we often have various senses, and you can see this reflected in the vestibular system, but we'll have visual processing with, say, auditory and motor processing that are all connected within the gaze to coordinate things like our position and make predictions about where we are in space and how far objects are and where we can locate objects. So that's also directly connected to this idea of local. But the vestibular system too is also very, very important for balance, and that's connecting our visual processes, our auditory processes, and our motor sense processes, but also what's another sense been referred to as proprioception, which is our sense of self in space. And you'll see this actually distributed throughout the body in various ways in the brain. So you have individual processes related to vision, related to the to auditory information and motor information that relate to balance and position and distance, so have various degrees of spatial awareness. And you also see that reflected within proprioception, which even occurs at the level of the cell. And that has a lot to do with the sense of the self and the surroundings, or the sense, when it comes to self, the sense of the perceptual model of that cell within relation to the surroundings. And what's occurring in multiple channels of communication is that there's an exchange and an amalgamation of that meaning and information, and the meaning allows us, because the meaning is broader and it's formed in these situated contexts that allow us to hone in on information and make more approximate predictions rather than precise, because the approximation allows us to be open and flexible and to adapt to more ranges of circumstances. And you see that also reflected in the benefits that we get when we're engaging more of this full range of motion and exercise. And also you can see it reflected in personality with full ranges of perception, full ranges of motivation, full ranges of emotion, full ranges of action, full ranges of behavior that is associated with trait openness and oftentimes self-intelligence and intelligence, and these regulatory factors of the self that tend to be related to optimal well-being, particularly positive well-being and human flourishing. So that's just a brief interview of multiple channels of communication. I'm going to be talking about much more on this, and I'm doing some work and writing on these topics that I'll be communicating more regarding optimized learning, as well as the relation to positive psychological wellness infrastructure and how it supports that, and how and also I'll be talking a lot more about direction and self-direction pertaining to that, because they're essential to that. Part of what is essential to optimal learning is direction, and particularly self-direction in learning, and doing that in the context of an open environment where we're free to act flexibly in the world and to develop our own interpretation of what's meaningful and value, and also to imbue our perceptions, motivations, emotions, actions, and behavior with what we find meaningful and what we find valuable, and with meaning and value itself. And that's all I wanted to say about that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye.